Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the University of the Philippines Open University's Make Climate a Conversation teach-in event. This event is in collaboration with Worldwide Teach-in Philippines and graduate programs in sustainability of Bard College. We are so glad to have you all here today. I am Faith Margot Picaubang, a freshman in the Bachelor of Education Studies course at University of the Philippines Open University.
My name is Carl Alex M. Lorito. I am a biology graduate of University of Southeastern Philippines and now a first-year student of Master of Environment and Natural Resources Management of University of Southeastern Philippines Open University. I am a climate justice and biodiversity conservation advocate.
We are worldwide teaching interns.
And we will be your hosts for today's Climate Justice Teach-In.
If you're here with us now, drop an emoji of your feelings right now in the chat. You can also type your name, from what school you're from, and from where you're watching now.
Amazing. So many feelings of wow. You know, Faith, I share the same feeling with our participants right now, as I am very excited to learn from our resource speakers for today. Heart emojis are also dominating. I can feel from here the warmth of everyone's support. Let me take this opportunity as well to thank everyone who spared their precious time attending this webinar. On behalf of the Worldwide Teach-in Philippines, we are truly grateful. I hope you will be with us until the end of this webinar. Hi and welcome to our webinar today from BSBA, De Los Santos Alexandra M, Leonardo Jamaica D from BSBA 3G, and from the University of the Philippines Open University's Environment and Natural Resources Management as well.
A warm welcome also to Diane from Pampanga State Agricultural University, Miss Terika Obang, Miss Eliza Diane Dancel, Sir Joseph from Social Studies student from SLSU Lokban, and Mr. Jeffrey Villegas from Thailand. Hello po, everyone.
Hello and welcome to the webinar for today.
Let us make this teach-in a trend on social media as well. You can post across different social media platforms using Make Climate a Conversation.
Yes, Make Climate a Conversation.
From SLSU Lokban.
Yes, Faith.
Hello. Now that we know our audience, it's your turn to know us. The Worldwide Teach-In or WWTI internship is a project under Bard University's Sustainability Program. It is an educational forum that creates solutions-oriented discussion designed to maximize community engagement. At Worldwide Teach-In, we aim to turn climate apathy into climate action.
Worldwide Teach-In also encourages individuals globally to engage in teach-ins to promote climate as subject in educational institutions. But what is really our goal? Our goal is to spark action on climate justice and promote climate solutions so that future generations may live another day to enjoy the wonders of the earth just as we do now. Well, shout out to our participants from Nueva Ecija University and of Science and Technology. We also have participants from Pampanga State Agricultural University. Hello and welcome to the webinar. Yes, next slide, please.
Yes.
Hello, welcome Welcome to this webinar. Hello. Good afternoon. We also have participants from Thailand. Hello. So we are live worldwide.
Yes,
And also participants from Laguna State Polytechnic University. Hello, good afternoon. And to formally start our program, let us first hear the opening remarks. Yes, again. To formally start our program, let us first hear the opening remarks from the University of the Philippines, Open University's very own. She is a director of the University of the Philippines Open University Office of Public Affairs. She is also the newly appointed Dean of the Faculty of Management and Development Studies. Please all welcome Dr. Joanne Serrano. A warm virtual round of applause, please.
Hey everyone. I'm not the director anymore. So my appointment as dean started yesterday. Good day everyone. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today in this Climate Justice Teach-In webinar, which we have entitled hashtag Make Climate a Conversation, which is co-organized by the UP Open University in collaboration with BARD graduate programs in sustainability. Just to give you the context how we're able to collaborate with the Bard College. We started our collaboration with Bard College through the efforts of Dr. David Blackstein and Dr. Ivan Goodstein last year, when UPOU also joined the global dialogue on how to solve climate by 2030 through a webinar entitled Climate Solutions, the Philippine Context, which we organized last April 7, 2021. And in that webinar, we heard various perspectives on specific steps that could help the Philippines solve climate change. So we also had 4 panelists during that time, and they shared how their different fields of expertise and background could contribute in finding solutions to the climate crisis. So there was one speaker who shared how art can be a powerful way to change the mindset of people, to convince, to communicate, and lead to behavior change. And then another speaker talked about climate solutions through permaculture, which is a design philosophy integrating ecology, agriculture, and landscape design. And then another speaker discussed the utility of indigenous knowledge as a climate solution, focusing on agriculture and food security, land use and environmental sustainability, as well as community values and customary laws. And the last speaker last year talked about forest management as key to successful climate change mitigation, emphasizing the Philippine forests are a significant sinks of carbon, which attributing to 100 million tons of carbon. So for last year's event, you can still view them. I think they're still at our repository of open educational resources at networks.upou.edu.ph. Now, because of that collaboration, UPOU students were able to join the internship, the one that was discussed earlier, on Climate Justice Teach-In webinar, which actually made this year a collaborative event possible. So I would like to thank the interns for organizing this event. One of the major thrusts of UPOU is towards sustainability, and in really helping achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And SDG 13, which is on climate action, urges us to take action to combat climate change and its impacts. Now, for the audience who have just been invited here as part of a class requirement, let me just briefly highlight how important this conversation is about climate change and climate solutions. The Philippines, our very own country, is one of the most vulnerable countries when it comes to the impacts of climate change. Various climate change events, which include sea level rise, increased frequency of extreme weather events, rising temperatures, and heavy rainfall all pose a threat to the Philippines. And we all know that this is due to our country's vulnerability to natural dangers such as typhoons and droughts, as well as our reliance on climate-sensitive natural resources and extensive coastline, which are really home to the country's main cities and most of the Philippine population. Now, our speakers today will shed light and give more in-depth explanation about climate solutions, climate crisis, and how we'll be able to contribute to be part of the solution to this climate crisis. Now, I just want to say that climate change is not an abstract problem, but it actually intersects with almost all issues in society, such as poverty, food security, water scarcity, flooding, drought, public health, gender, as well as education. And this issue is not really something new, but we have noticed that people shy away from talking about climate change. We only discuss climate change in required topics in our classes, but we never really make it a piece of conversation. So that's actually one of the objectives of this webinar. In this teaching webinar, we are promoting the project Make Climate a Conversation to encourage everyone to openly discuss about climate crisis and how it affects us on a personal level and as a society. So in the next 3 hours or so, you will hear from speakers about this topic, and I hope we will be able to bring this discourse to our own individual context. So again, welcome and thank you for attending. Good day.
Good day, Dr. Serrano. Thank you so much for that remarkable introduction. Truly, while combating climate change, we also aim for sustainable development. Thank you once again. Now let us hear some opening remarks from one of the co-directors of the Worldwide Teach-In, directing the Bard Center for Environmental Policy, and with a 20-year-long career as a professor of economics. Let us all give a warm virtual round of applause to Dr. Iban Goodstein.
Hello, my name is Iban Goodstein, and I am an economist and the director of the graduate programs focused on sustainability at Bard College in New York in the United States. I'm also honored to be the co-director of the Worldwide Teach-In on Climate and Justice that this week is helping to mobilize climate education events at over 300 universities, high schools, and other organizations around the world. I want to thank you all for participating in the Philippines events as part of the Teach-In, because we need to go forth from these educational opportunities to change the world. We're living in a truly extraordinary moment in the history of the human species. We have 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to rewire the entire globe with clean energy and move forward, adapting regenerative agricultural technologies that can suck carbon dioxide and other heat trapping gases out of the atmosphere. And in doing all that, we can stabilize the climate. That is the opportunity that lies before us. We do not have to live in a world where every year it's getting hotter and hotter, and typhoons are getting stronger and stronger, and sea level is rising higher and higher. That is not the kind of world that we have to hand on to our kids and grandkids. We really are in a position to make those changes, to build a clean energy future, to build resilient communities and regenerative agricultural systems that can be the foundation of a sustainable and prosperous world. So that's the work that we all have to do coming out of these teach-ins. And again, my gratitude to all of you for the work that you're going to do. I want to provide a special thank you to all of the people in the Philippines who work so hard organizing these events at the University of the Philippines, at the Open University, the University of Science and Technology, at Our Lady of Fatima University, at the OB Christian Community School, and from the Philippines chapter of the Climate Reality Project. I also want to acknowledge real creativity and leadership and imagination. Early in this project, I spoke with some of the Philippine organizers and organizers from all around the world about something that's really important that's missing from the global warming movement and the movement to stabilize the climate. And that is that we don't have a good song. And I think you all understand the power of song and the ability of song to inspire people and bring people together. There is not a song that people sing at climate marches or at climate protests, and we need one. I mentioned that, and four of the teach-in organizers from the Philippines stepped up and put their creative minds to work, and they have created a beautiful song called Change Climate Change. And I will make a commitment right now that we will do our best over the coming year, following the teach-in and before the next one in 2023, to inspire young people around the world to make music videos around change, climate change, to produce TikTok videos around change, climate change, and to get the refrain from that song out there so that we know next time we come together what we need to sing together. So a special thank you to Faith Cobang, Hannah Barakit, Carlo Perete, and to Alex Buenaventura for their contribution to this important contribution to this work. So thank you and have a fabulous teach-in event.
Now let's
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Let me share my screen first. Kita na naman guys. Okay. So magandang hapon po sa ating lahat, and I'm currently in the office, so pardon me if there will be some technical difficulties. Hopefully, this presentation will give you an insight of how could green chemistry help us fight our biggest problem, climate change. Chemistry as an academic subject was taught even when we are in the grade school. And when we hear the word chemical, the first thing that comes in our mind is hazard. But little is known, how do we engineer chemicals at the atomic level so that it becomes more beneficial to us and the environment? Now you may ask, why should I care? Wait lang. Oh, sorry for the minimal distraction. You may ask, why should I care? The answer is simple. As the global income rises, our need for modern products heavily relying on chemicals are also growing. Human beings really love convenient life, but in the process, we forget that we have badly impacted the very source of all the things that we take for granted, which is our Mother Earth. All the ways that comes from the technological advances that we enjoy, yung mga branded shirts or pants nyo, yung electronic device, iPhone, Android, yung mga daily maintenance na gamot, multivitamins, yung processes that give birth to these very useful products generates billion tons of waste, affecting our environment and causing climate change. We badly need to reinvent the classical chemical processes in order to save our environment. Calling the 100 participants in this virtual conversation, my question, do we really need chemicals? Sagot sa chat box. The answer is straightforward, yes. But we asked the wrong question. People of the Philippines, the question should be, which chemicals will be needed for a sustainable future? And this is where green chemistry comes in. The government and the private sectors from the first world country have an ongoing R&D investment for green chemistry projects. To cite some of those projects, please refer to the pictures on this slide. First, do you know carbon dioxide, the problematic greenhouse gas, which is contributes to global warming, can be used to decaffeinate your coffee and even remove the trichloroanisole or TCA toxin in cork caps used in wines. Knowledge in green chemistry can be used to pressurize the carbon dioxide to achieve supercritical property to make it useful. And also, did you know that the last year Nobel Prize in Chemistry follow some of the principles of green chemistry in order to provide safe, effective, and environmentally friendly medicines for humankind? And mind you guys, the chemical waste that comes from the pharmaceutical companies are one of the biggest contributors of environmental hazards. I should know because I have been in that industry for 4 years. Now, what if I tell you that there is an excellent opportunity in recycling electronic waste? These solid waste, if directly thrown on the dump site, would cause heavy metals poisoning in the environment. But with copper, gold from this electronic waste just by using microorganisms through biological processes. And now, could green chemistry make a difference? Raise your hand, guys, if you argue. But the answer for me is yes. Green chemistry is like the saying, prevention is better than cure. And according to the father of green chemistry, Dr. Anastas, green chemistry allows us to enjoy all the technological advances and innovations without the unintended consequences. And that ends my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, guys.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Villarmino, for sharing your knowledge on green chemistry and its role in climate change. Hopefully, the Philippines can move to more sustainable policies in the near future. Now, the last speaker for this first hour session is Mr. Carlo Perete. Mr. Perete is a registered pharmacist with a Master's of Sciences. He is currently the Regional Quality Assurance Manager for Asia at Alcon Laboratories. He is also a Lean Sigma Green Belt practitioner and a certified quality auditor. Let us give Mr. Carlo Perete a warm virtual round of applause.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending this webinar. My topic this afternoon is about medical wastes and climate change. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have used pharmaceuticals. So your vitamins, your antibiotics when you get sick, the maintenance for those of us in the older population. Sometimes we get hospitalized as well. And in the hospitals, there are usage of chemicals and like anesthetics that contributes directly to what we call as medical waste. And this is my topic this afternoon, how medical waste contributes to climate change. So first, the World Health Organization defined health as not merely the absence of a disease, but it's the overall totality of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So one of the direct effects, of course, of climate change, if we have droughts, if we have strong typhoons, then crops will be destroyed, there will be food insecurity. That leads to hunger and malnutrition leads to the immune system being lowered, and therefore you get sick. In heat waves, for instance, in countries where heat waves are being experienced, or particularly India, you have heat stroke, and you have cardiovascular ailments like heart attacks that is contributed by the increase in temperature. So really, climate change is a growing health threat for all of us. Now, the interesting thing is the healthcare industry itself contributes to climate change. So by anesthesia, the anesthetics used in surgery operations in the hospital, the propellants, the fluorocarbons that are used in our inhalers. For those of you who are asthmatic, you probably use the Ventolin inhalers and the dry powder inhalers. So these Ventolin inhalers are example of a drug that is propelled with the use of fluorocarbon, which contributes directly to greenhouse gases. Then you have non-biodegradable materials like packaging and the surgical masks, for instance, or the PPEs. These are made of polymers that contributes directly to medical wastes. That's a big problem to have. Now let's talk about the solution. So the previous speaker talks about green chemistry, and green chemistry is under the preventative measures to combat medical waste and climate change. So we design chemicals that are eco-friendly, for instance, the anesthetics. We design energy-efficient manufacturing operations for pharmaceuticals. We segregate waste. For instance, the polymers used in plastic manufacturing in the pharmaceutical industry can be used again to produce more packaging materials. So that's the preventative aspect. Now let's talk about waste management. So when you have an accumulation of waste, you have to make sure that you comply with regulations. There's the Sanitation Act of the Philippines, PD 856. There's the Hospital License Act. So before a hospital can be licensed, it has to be audited by certain sectors in the government. Then there has to be proper disposal of waste and treatment of medical waste. As a quality professional, I accompany DNR when we destroy medical waste and pharmaceuticals in landfills. We have to comply with regulations. And lastly, advocacy. As a pharmacist, I tell you, don't buy a lot of medicines and medical devices. In the pandemic, we hoard a lot of masks, and these masks just end up in the landfills or in the oceans. So only use medicines and medical devices and cosmetics that you will be able to use within the expiration date. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Perete, for that wonderful talk on medical waste and its role in the climate crisis. Like what you and Mr. Alvin said, waste is a key contributor to global warming and a growing health threat. Now that we have learned so much new information, it's time to clarify and explore with a Q&A. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat or comment on our Facebook or YouTube Live. Be assured that the team will see your message. If you'd like to speak on mic, please raise your virtual Zoom hand and wait to be called. We also ask that you please open your camera when you speak. Thank you. And I now pass it to Carl to moderate our question and answer.
Indeed, the first hour session was really informative, from topics about impacts of climate change down to topic about medical waste and its role in the climate crisis. So please take note that we will only be entertaining 6 questions after every hour session, and rest assured that most, if not all, will be answered by our speakers in the Zoom chat, Facebook, and YouTube comments. But again, as much as we want to, our speakers can only answer 6 questions. You can now comment down your answers in our Facebook chat, in our Zoom.
Yes.
let us also acknowledge the efforts and time shared and given to us by our resource speakers. Allow me to read the certificate of appreciation to our first set of speakers. Certificate of appreciation is presented to Mr. Lorenzo Lim for being a resource speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice and climate change. Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom the 2nd of April 2002. The certificate is signed by Professor Joan Serrano of the University of the Philippines Open University and Ms. Faith Margot Kaubang, the team leader of the Worldwide Peace Constellation. Appreciation is also given to Mr. Alfred Ferrero, Mr. Gerald Villar, and Mr. Carlo Paredes. Thank you for giving us your time. Put into being part of hashtag. We will now take a short 5-minute break. Enjoy this original climate song by the Worldwide Peace Institute team. Participants from the University of the Philippines Open University, from the Lupon Vocational High School. Hello and welcome to this webinar.
Hello.
Yes, Faith.
Hi, sorry. I think your audio is a bit trippy. Maybe go back to the certificates. That's all right. Let's deal with that audio problem. Thank you. All right. So
Oh, I'm really sorry.
no, it's all right. It's all right. And thank you again. Let us present the certificate of appreciation to Mr. Lorenzo Lim for being a resource speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice and climate change. Oh, wait. Sorry. Hashtag Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom the 2nd of April 2022. A certificate of appreciation is also presented to Mr. Alvin Tesorero for being a resource speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice on climate change, hashtag Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom the 2nd of April 2022. Also for Sir Gerald Villarmino. The certificate of appreciation is presented to Sir Gerald Villarmino for being a resource speaker in the webinar. Last but not least for this session is for the certificate of appreciation presented to Sir Carlo Parete for being a resource speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice on climate change, hashtag Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom the 2nd of April 2022. Thank you again for all the effort you have put into being a part of hashtag Make Climate a Conversation. We will now take a 5-minute short break and enjoy this original climate change song by the Worldwide Teach-In team while you wait. See you soon!
What it means for us to keep living, to witness the world slowly dying. Why don't you open your eyes die? Will we wait for our waters to dry before we make a stand and fight hand in hand? So let us rise up for climate justice now. Let us fight for a right, for a brighter today. So let us rise up, nothing can stop us now. Heads up, take a stand, let us lead the way to change climate change. Wake up and realize there is no planet B. How about we stop, think about our society? Why don't we go start a change, save the world if it's strange, for our future's sake? Let us start it today, no room for delay. You know there's a way. We will rise up for climate justice now. We will fight for a right, for a brighter today. We will rise up, nothing can stop us now. Hands up, take a step, let us lead the way to change climate change. It's time to take our chance and start a revolution. It's time to build a home for the next generation. Stand for the oppressed, fight for social equity. Hope inside our heart, we will make a legacy. Yeah. We will rise up for climate justice now. Oh, we will fight for right, for brighter today. We will rise up, nothing can stop us now. Oh, heads up, take a stand, let us lead the way. And we will rise up for climate justice now. We will fight for a better tomorrow. We will rise up, nothing can break us down. Onward up in arms, let us be the way to change climate way.
Change on a global scale and what efforts we can do to help mitigate climate change. So for the first speaker of our second hour session, he is a social sciences instructor at Our Lady of Fatima University, Valenzuela, with a degree in social sciences from the University of the Philippines, Baguio. He is currently taking up his master's degree in ASEAN Studies at the University of the Philippines Open University. Let us welcome Mr. Alec Hope Buenaventura with a warm virtual round of applause. Mr. Benaventura, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. How are we today? Okay, can you hear me? If you can hear me and my audio is clear, can you give me a thumbs up? Thumbs up, thumbs up. All right. So let me share my screen. So my topic is about the global effects of climate change, but I went on the next step and discussed to you a global system. Okay, how does climate change create, or climate injustice rather, create a world system? Okay, so in order for us to deal with that, we have to understand that we will be using many lenses from um, from uh, international relations and social sciences. Okay, so these are just some. The main theory that I'll be coming from is the world systems and the neo-Marxist ideology put forward by Gramsci. Okay, so but I will not discuss them here. I will be using them to answer your questions later on. Right? So we will look at these theories and try to explain how climate injustice works. So basically, the first aspect or the first thing that we have to take note is that the world is in a global stratification. We have the developed countries versus the developing countries. So they change it in a way that it sounds good, but in reality, it is still the first world versus the third world countries. Okay, we will be looking at four aspects here: the greenhouse effect, the economic aspect, the political aspect, and the socio-cultural aspect, as to which how a system works better for the developed countries and worse for the developing countries, and its relation to climate change. Let us start first with the greenhouse effect. So we have instigators of the greenhouse effect and we have victims. So basically the instigators are, of course, the developed countries. Now, throughout the years, when you look at this data, these are the data from 1750 to 2020 of cumulative, pinagsama-sama na carbon dioxide emission. Mind you, this is just one thing, carbon dioxide. We also have other kinds of greenhouse gas, right? So carbon dioxide emissions from 1750, what is 1750 has to do with it? It is the start of the Industrial Revolution, the 1700s. Countries started to industrialize and modernize, and then exploit so much fossil fuel and emit so much carbon dioxide. So look at the main instigators. Mainly, cumulatively, it would be the developed countries. If not the developed, the developing. Okay, or the near developed, not the developing, rather. Those who are industrialized but still under the category of developing, such as China. Okay, they are the main instigators of greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so why are we victims? It is related to the economic aspect. Okay, when you look at the economic aspect, the developed countries, since they are industrialized, they are actually benefiting from the use of fossil fuels. Okay, because of the fossil fuels and the use of energy, they are producing more. While we in the developing countries, which comprises most, ng developing countries ay agricultural, we suffer. Look at this data. Okay, 63%. This data is from, this pie chart is from 2008 to 2018. From data from least developed countries and lower middle income countries, they are actually suffered those 63% of agriculture because of disasters induced by climate change. Right? How much did they lose in terms of income? Only the developing countries. Okay? billion US dollars rather. Okay, they have lost 108 billion US dollars from that decade, 2008 to 2018 only. Okay. So the next aspect, political. Okay. So nakikita natin, the instigators are gaining, while those who are not participating as much would be victims, the victimized economically, also politically. We have the developed countries, they are the hegemons. So pag sinabi natin hegemon, superpower, they impose on us Okay? In the developing countries, we become hegemonized. Hegemonized. Okay? So, why or how? Now, look at this. Sino ang nagbe-benefit? Again, no, in terms of economy, na malinaw na yan, no, the developed countries. Since they got that economic value, no, they use it as economic power and translate it into military and psychological power. The three dimensions of national power. Okay? So ginagamit nila ang oil as basis of their power. Okay, itong mga countries na ito. Okay? What else? Do you know that they are benefiting from the melting of the ice caps? How? When you look at this, no, noong 2012, ganito pa kadami yung ice caps dito sa Arctic. Abot yan, no? I'll just zoom. Okay? Pero ngayon, ito na. So ano daw ang naging effect niyan? Wow! Para sa ating mga developed countries, mga industrialized, no? It is a shorter trade route for them. No? How can they view something so environmentally controversial, no? Nasasabihin nila it is good for them. No? Sinisira nga yung environment, no? It breaks a lot of ecosystem, no? So ayan yung mga bagong trade routes na nabuksan dahil diyan. So gusto nila yan, no? The hegemons like this, no? And they want to keep it that way, na sila ang may control ng oil. Okay? So yun ang gusto nila, no? They wanted to keep that power, that economic power given to them by the oil, by fossil fuel. What else? Do you know that yung natutunaw na yelo na yan, no, inaantay nila matunaw yan ng buo. Bakit? Merong mga minerals diyan. At tulad ng Russia, no, na malapit sa Arctic, hindi sila papayag na mauna ang China diyan. Ang China nag-expedition diyan. Hindi sila papayag na other superpowers would be able to get there first. Habang tayo, no, nagsasuffer, so agriculture sector natin bumabagsak, naghihirap tayo. Ano nangyayari? No? We become even culturally hegemonized. No? The developing countries become culturally hegemonized. Okay? While these developed countries become cultural hegemons and cultural imperialists. So this is a socio-cultural aspect. Kahit pa ma-break natin yung pera, no? Kahit sabihin mo na sinusuportahan tayo, this is a model of how the developed countries tinutulungan daw ang mga developing countries dahil sa damage na na-receive natin sa disasters due to climate change. No? Pero alam naman natin that this utang is babayaran natin in any way. And by that I mean, no, pwedeng economic, pwedeng political, no, sometimes territorial. Right? So, yung IMF, gustong-gusto niya ng utang tayo, no? At kapag tayo ay may utang, no, sa kanila, no, they have hold, they have power over us. And it is embedded in our culture. How? Kanino ba galing most of our products? Sa kanila, di ba? No, habang tayo natutuwa, no, nawiwili sa technologies na binibigay nila, on a positive note, it is really helpful, no? But you have to look at the bigger picture here. Okay? They put us this production or these products and control our lives with it. Mainly, we are using so much energy right now. Right now, at this moment, we are burning fossil fuels. Right now, at this moment, we are using culturally imperialized materials or technologies from this developed world, specifically in the Western Hemisphere. Okay? So how do we achieve climate justice? Climate justice can only be achieved if we refuse to live by the standards imposed to us by the developed countries. According to Emanuel Wallerstein, man's ability to participate intelligently in the evolution of his own system is dependent on his ability to perceive the whole. We have to understand that we are under one system before we can start to make a change. That is what Emanuel Wallerstein is saying here. Thank you for listening to my piece.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buenaventura, for showing us the global effects of climate change. Truly, the climate crisis is a global problem in need of a global solution. To our next speaker, she is a student in the Bachelor of Education Studies course at the University of the Philippines Open University. She is an educator, climate activist, and an artist. Let us give Miss Tony Suzuki a virtual round of applause.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so can you hear me well?
Yes, Miss Tony.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so yeah, so I would just like to touch the concept of climate change and its effects to women, and also the role of women in this issue. So climate change, it has been around for a long time, and people seem to have grown immune on this concern. So especially now that we are in this pandemic, people are overwhelmed, and there's just so much going around that the environment continues to suffer due to lack of sustainable solutions and actions. But thankfully, so we are here as climate activists who are doing our part, our best, to not only raise awareness, but also initiate conversations on solutions for environmental problems. So yeah, you may ask, so now, how are women affected by climate change? You might say, all of us are affected, all of us will suffer in the long term. So yes, that is indeed true, but what we must remember is gender inequality is also prevalent in this sector. So women in other parts of the world are yet to have control and decision-making processes. And there are areas or countries wherein women still lack access to education, especially information, when it comes to climate change discussion. So to give a specific example, we all know how climate change affects our day-to-day activities. So let's just go to household chores. So imagine those areas in the world that are hit hard by the effects of global warming or natural disasters, specifically those areas that lack supply of clean water. So here is something that I have read from Global Citizen. So to quote them, this is about women in parts of India and Bangladesh. When extreme temperatures dry up sources of water, women have to travel longer distances to collect water for cooking, cleaning, and managing gardens. As a result, they have less time to pursue other sources of income, which prevents them from being economically independent. So at first, it seemed to be just a problem of accessible supply of water, but see how it turned out to be one root cause on why women do not have enough time to focus on themselves. Plus, the fact that some are still not allowed to actually be independent. And so, of course, we must not forget our indigenous women and those living in conflict or disaster-prone areas. We must be aware on their oppression and these sorts of issues when it's evident why they should always be heard and included in conversations, as they are the ones who suffer a lot from environmental degradation. Yeah, so as we continue on fighting for the climate or the environment, we are now activists, so which in turn gives us the opportunity to also fight for other injustices suffered in the world. We must advocate for the inclusion of women and all gender in climate conversations. So women are also resilient. We can also contribute and be part of climate action and justice. It is inspiring and motivating to see more women creating spaces to talk about climate and innovating concepts that help utilize our resources and lessen waste. So I see many start-up businesses owned by women, from selling menstrual cups, shampoo bars, conditioners, and our reusable cotton and cotton buds. So all of those, I I personally use to support, and they're really good products, life changing as well. In these simple ways, we're able to help the environment, especially the effects of climate change. All right, so now before I end, I just want to share some influencers on Instagram that I personally follow and they inspire me. So at first we have Climate Diva. So she's all about sustainable fashion and beauty, and also initiates climate communication. So you can go check their pages. And next we have at Brown Girl Green, or Christy Drutman. She is a Jewish Filipina, and she posts all about green topics and how to live more sustainably. And of course, we have Miss Masha Zabara. So she's our leader in this worldwide teaching project. So she helps us in everything that we're doing. And she's also an activist and the co-founder of Thrift to Fight. So this is the handle. which is a sustainable clothing store concept in New York. And of course, we have Greta Thunberg, of course, a very young climate activist. And I know that you know her well, as she was very controversial. So go ahead and check their pages if you want to see more environmental related content or sustainability solutions and stuff. So that's it. I hope that you're able to pick up a few ideas on how climate justice can help women, and in return, how women move for the environment. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Suzuki, for that talk on climate change and women. Truly, women empowerment all the way. Climate change continues to negatively impact different people around the world in various ways. And down to our next speaker, she is the program chair of the University of the Philippines Open University's Master of Arts in Nursing program. She is also the representative of the Ugnayan ng Pahinungod Committee on Psychosocial Emergency Service, or COPS. Let us give a warm welcome to Assistant Professor Ria Valerie D. Cabanes through a virtual round of applause.
All right, so thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Ria, and I'm here to discuss about mental health and climate change. So allow me to share my screen. There you are. Okay. So I'm confident that the majority, if not all of the webinar participants, believe in climate change. You know, we held a workshop on stress reduction techniques yesterday. And when we asked the participants how they felt, you know, just like how we started this webinar, the majority of them actually expressed dissatisfaction with the weather in the Philippines. So I was quite surprised na everyone was having a great time today, but yesterday they were having a different mood. So yeah, and then so I just want to connect that one with this. So take a look at the picture on your screen, and then, you know, how do you feel? You can type it, or you can, you know, keep it to yourself if you want. But what I'm trying to say is feelings are just a tiny fraction of mental health, as well as temperature to climate change. But there is, you know, if there's this clear relationship between these simple variables, then perhaps there's a larger picture. Okay, so there you go. Okay. So our emotional, psychological, and social well-being all contribute to mental health as defined by CDC. Okay, so mental health is not all or nothing. So there's a spectrum. Hindi ka pwedeng walang mental health or merong mental health. Sometimes we are this healthy person mentally, but then there would be times wherein we are here struggling or here unwell. So when you saw the pictures I gave you a while ago, I doubt someone would say glad or excited or anything from this happy portion of the feelings. This is by Wilcox. Okay, so I just included this because it's a very great way to identify certain feelings. So it's used, you know, it's actually good to use this circle. As they say, acknowledgement and acceptance is the key to change and improvement. And this will probably help those who are feeling emotionally lost right now. So there you go. Okay. Now, let's associate mental health and climate change. Primarily, we have to understand that there are three types of impact: acute, subacute, and long-term. So acute mental health impact is actually triggered by sudden extreme events. So subacute are those, there's this lingering, lingering intense emotion as you witness or experience effects of climate change. Then we also have long-term impact. Following the definition of mental health, climate change can make us feel fearful, bad, sad, angry, and even disgusted. So climate change and mental health links is seen as we react to extreme heat, or when there are people losing properties or loved ones because of, say, water disasters or wildfires or winter storms. Okay, now climate change also trigger different sentiments and behavior. Extreme weathers, too cold or too hot can kill living creatures. If you feel sad, if your plants are drying out, imagine the emotion of the family members of farmers who are dying because of heat stroke. So moving on to psychology, there's suicide, aggressive behaviors. We also have despair. We also have anxiety. So all of them are related to climate change. We're scared, so we don't sleep because you're anticipating perhaps another aftershock because you had an earthquake earlier, or because we are so worried that we have not received some news from our relatives in, let's say, disaster-stricken areas, or because our bed is wet, or worse, it's actually gone with the flash flood. So yeah, and also, did you know this is just a trivia? When it's hot, our discomfort can actually lead to feelings of hostility and aggressive thoughts. So yeah, be careful when joking around if it's hot or humid, kasi baka masampal kayo minsan. Yeah, there are studies that correlates higher temperatures to crimes and violence. Extreme climates can also cause loss of jobs. Farmers, for example, imagine the pressure of trying a new job to feed your family because you cannot till the land anymore. When you witness an event, I have mentioned this as a subacute impact, this can cause certain post-traumatic stresses. So imagine if you if that impact people who actually experienced the trauma themselves. Now we also have life destructions. Imagine losing family members, as I've said earlier. I've also mentioned a long-term impact. It actually affects the community, giving large-scale effects. Now, this would include violence, looting, killing, survival of the fittest as we fight over what's left. People are not naturally greedy, but when there's a scarcity, it's human nature to think about your family's needs first. So it causes a lot of stress. Communities that are displaced, those who evacuated, that will have to undergo long-term adjustments. Yeah. So moving on, the last aspect of mental health, according to the definition, is social. So climate change has lots of social dimensions. And one of the major elements that can affect this is the sense of belonging to a community. People who are forced now to relocate will have altered relationships and connections to their circle. Now, remember Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda? Even those who are actually assigned to provide mental health support cannot do so because they themselves are victims. So people experiencing crisis due to disasters have, this feeling of inauthentic or undervalued sense of belonging when it comes to social. Okay, climate change issues can trigger questions on inequality, discrimination. This actually leads to low self-worth, depression, and even suicide. I've been talking about people who has healthy mental state. So just imagine, what about those who are already at risk? What about those who have low socioeconomic status, the marginalized, certain social groups? What about those who have mental issues already? So their mental distress will be exacerbated. They will become more vulnerable to mood disorders and psychiatric illnesses. So I have mentioned about the spectrum earlier, and this minimal stresses can lead to distress syndromes and eventually clinical disorders if there was no action taken. So that's the problem there. Okay. Now to end, I'd like to share keywords which you can make use of when you, would like to research about this topic. These are new, okay? So, well, to some, okay? Such as eco-anxiety, eco guilt, eco shame, solastalgia. Imagine there's a word such as solastalgia. This is actually the distress caused by environmental change. We also have eco-depression, eco-anger, and of course, the climate anxiety. Imagine how people felt in the movie Don't Look Up. It's just like that. So the clock is ticking and we can do something about this. We can research more and help provide substantial literature that will guide policymakers. We can join mental health advocacy groups such as the UPOU Pahinungod, which Ms. Faith Kaubang is also a part of. And yes, if you are experiencing any mental health issues, know that you are not alone and your feelings are valid. So there are lots of mental health resources and support groups that can help. One of which is Cognitio Plus. You can check their website to know the services they offer. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you learned something from me. Here are my resources. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assistant Professor Cabanes, for your talk on climate change and mental health. I learned about how this climate crisis can affect one's well-being and one's state of mind. Hashtag mental health matters. For the last speaker of this session, he is the head of research strategy and governance at the University of Plymouth with a doctorate from the University of Durham. He is also a contributor and external reviewer for local nature recovery strategies post at parliament.uk and an assistant guest editor of Sustainability, special issue A European Perspective on Cultural Heritage as a Driver for Sustainable Development and Regional Resilience at mdpi.com. Let us give a warm virtual round of applause to Dr. John Martin. Dr. Martin, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you everyone, and it's a great pleasure to join you all today. Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So yes, as I said, thank you. It's a great honor to join you today, and it's been really interesting listening to the talk so far, and hopefully I'll have some synergy with the talks we've heard so far. Today I'm going to talk about individuals, what an individual can do in terms of influence climate change. So try to introduce some of the things we can do and then focus more on one particular area which is interest of my research, and hopefully leave you with some questions to think about. I haven't got the answers. I think this is just to provoke questions and think about how we move forward. As we said right at the beginning, it's really important to take this forward as a group to tackle these issues at a global level. So what can we do? Well, there's a myriad of things that you face with when people think about what we can do as an individual to face climate change, and there's information everywhere. But I've actually found a particularly good resource, which is developed by Imperial College London at the Grantham Institute. And there they identify 9 things that you can do as an individual to help with climate change. I've put the webpage link there. It's a very good resource, and it leads you then to scientific papers and research papers that help evidence some of these things that they encourage people to do. As I said, there's a wealth of information out there. So I thought what to do is run through some of these, and then, as I said, I will then focus in on one particular aspect around green spaces. Let's start off with number 1, which we've already heard several times today in terms of making your voice heard. Obviously, we heard about the women's group in terms of activists, and the importance of making your voices heard, and also the importance of making change. It's important to make your opinions clear to your local councillors, your city mayors, your MPs, but also it's important to join those social movements and campaigns to raise those items of climate change onto the agenda of these decision makers and policy makers. And also, which I'll talk about a bit later on, is also those industries manufacturing those products that eat up lots of energy and also are very difficult to recycle or reuse, which also add to the climate change issue. So there's a real issue to make your voice heard, and whether that be through following social media, or through contacting your members of parliament or your politicians, it all helps towards moving the issue forward on the agenda. Secondly, the issue of eating less meat and dairy, and the issue of high production of meat and dairy products. Obviously, this is a view to try and reduce down the high environmental impact of those types of activities, those high brand agriculture. So it's actually looking at changing of those diets, or looking at changing of how you source that, how you source your food supply, making it fresh, local produce that's sustainably developed. As we heard previously about the climate, as we heard earlier about the political injustice, often, unfortunately, it's the developing countries that are faced with the mass production of these meat products, which then ruin the biodiversity and ruin the environments within those particular areas and cause bigger issues for them. So not only does it help in terms of the environmental impact of producing less meat, but also reduces those local level issues that are faced by those countries. Thirdly, think about cutting flights. Obviously, the pandemic saw a huge number of flights being cut, and a lot more people using items like Zoom and Teams and those sorts of video conferencing video conferencing technologies that allow communities to communicate without having to flights. But if travel is still needed, obviously look at other forms of transport, and then if flights are needed, then obviously look at offsets. There's a huge number of offset schemes that actually generally make a difference in terms of how they work, how they offset carbon. There's an interesting statistic that shows that actually, not that I've ever traveled, but anyone traveling on business class has a 3 times bigger carbon footprint than someone traveling in economy class. So again, even thinking about what type of flight you've taken and where you sit in the plane makes a big difference. Fourthly, think about leaving your car at home. So obviously, everyone is fully aware of the greenhouse emissions that come from cars and petrol and diesel vehicles. So again, think about what that impact is. Think about the exhaust fumes that also pose a serious threat to public health in large cities and in large urban areas. And also, if you can't take public transport or a bike or walk, then think about the conversion to electric cars and how that will happen. But again, that's a particular difficult, would take some time to get into that realm of moving to electrical vehicles, and all the issues associated with electrical vehicles also have to be considered. Fifthly, think about reducing use of energy. So again, that consumption of energy not only helps in terms of saving energy, but also reduces the energy bills for communities. So again, at this current time, the global energy price is rising. So actually, if you can also be more careful about how energy is used, about how houses are insulated or cooled, and how you stop energy escaping, or type of energy you use, can all help reduce that impact on the environment, but also reduce the bills and hopefully relieve the poverty. 6, protect those green spaces. So think about the green spaces within urban areas and within natural environment. Not only does this help absorb carbon dioxide and lower levels of pollution, but also we heard about health and well-being, and obviously the importance, and there's clear evidence and research showing that green spaces do contribute to the mental health and well-being. So really important to preserve those spaces, and I'll say a little bit more about that shortly. So I'm very conscious of time. Investing your money. So again, it's thinking about the investment and thinking the environmental and social governance of those large companies that people invest in, and how they use their money to make sure there isn't that climate injustice that we see, we've talked about earlier. So really think about that importance of how that money and what you think. Number 8 is cut consumption and waste. So this is on many parts, not only on food waste, but in terms of purchasing, what goods you purchase and how those goods are purchased, but also about purchasing power. So we heard about activists, and we heard about how it's important to raise these items to agenda, but it's also important to make those companies, those large companies that are producing products, think more green. So actually the consumer has a huge power. If they stop purchasing those goods, then the manufacturers need to change their views of what they're producing and how they're producing, and how they're treating the employees and how they're treating the environment where that manufacture is going on. So again, there's a two-prong attack on this, and I was only just discussing this with my PhD students the other day in terms of is it the activists that can make more of a difference, or the consumer in terms of what they buy? But I think it's actually the activist that brings the item onto the agenda, raises the agenda into the public space, and then the consumer can then take the action by not producing those products, not selling, not buying those products, and then making those organisations rethink about how they do it. And finally, number 9 is talk about those changes. So exactly what we're doing today and exactly what should go forward. Talk about how those changes to environment can happen. Talk about those positive changes and how environments can change in the positive approach to help tackle climate change. So as I said, we're doing this today, and it's important to take that away and raise those conversations with everyone in their daily life. Think about climate change and think about how you could impact on that, and let it become a conversation that's going on constantly, not just in particular issues. So what I've been in the last few minutes wanted to focus in on, because my particular area of interest is green spaces and understanding landscapes and understanding how those affect us. And as I see it, there's two-pronged attack here. There's a top-down approach, which we've heard about in terms of those government policies, and I noticed in the chat, and we discussed earlier, the issues that governments aren't doing enough. They're not doing enough to help this. There's not enough changes going on. There's also the Sustainable Development Goals that we heard Joanna talk about earlier and mention, and obviously Sustainable Development Goal 13, and many of those others also impact on climate change. So they're really, really good initiatives and policies, and all coming from the bottom and all coming from the top-down approach. We also, I've just mentioned a few examples there from the UK. Unfortunately, I don't have any Filipino examples, but from the UK, there's a number of government initiatives, government white papers, government reports, and government policies in terms of helping make a change to climate change, helping to make that change and protecting our landscapes, reviewing protected landscapes, environmental legislation. So all these things coming down from the top. But what I think is important is that this will never change just from top down. And as we heard, people believe that governments aren't doing enough. So there's definitely a need for the bottom-up approach. There's definitely a need for the individual. And in that space, there's two ways an individual can work here. One is when you all go away and you graduate and you find yourselves within jobs, maybe in government departments or maybe in NGOs or maybe in organizations where the environmental issues are on the front, is actually making sure that these government policies engage with local communities, engage with individuals, because they don't work alone on a national level. They do need engagement with locals. They do need to understand the issues within local environments. They do need to understand how individuals contribute to that. So that's a bit about the top-down and bottom-up approach in terms of tackling these issues. And then finally, where you can do on an individual to make a difference on green space, there's a number of initiatives going on across the globe, and you hear about these things called tiny forests or mini woods or mini forests, and this is where organizations and individuals are getting together in groups or on themselves to actually develop mini forests within urban spaces. So they're very, very small forests, very, very small woods that can be developed in quite small spaces in urban areas that actually add some green space. It helps cooling within those cities, it helps absorption of pollutants, and it also helps to that health and well-being, and also contributes towards reducing carbon within the atmosphere. So that's one incentive that's really on a community level in terms of getting together and developing those forests. And then there's green infrastructure. So we see green infrastructure that is rolled out by cities and planners, but also at a local level and an individual level, you can develop your own green structures, investing in green roofs, investing in garden window boxes. So simple things like window boxes where you're growing vegetation, which can also contribute to those simple tasks in terms of, as I said, green walls, and developing those infrastructure at a local level and an individual level that also can contribute to the overall picture. Sorry, I'm conscious I'm running out of time. And finally, this was really wanted to conclude and just pose some questions to everyone out there in terms of, this is obviously a complex problem of balancing these global issues with local issues, but it's really important that we think about that top-down and bottom-up approach to solve this problem. It's a global problem that needs solving. It can't be solved by just governmental approaches. It does need that top-down and bottom approach. It does need those communities to work together. There's also a need to value our climate, and also to understand how we fund it and how we value it in order to support those global requirements. And finally, just as important is, how do we monitor the success of those actions? How do we monitor the success of those policies? we need to gain to feed into communities. We need to feed into individuals so they understand that their contributions do help. They are making a difference, and that does allow these actions to work and get governments on board and make a difference to the climate going forward. So I apologize. I think I've run over a bit, but thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin, for teaching us what we can do as individuals to help contribute to climate solutions, especially the 9 things we can do about climate change and about the green spaces and green infrastructure. Indeed, we must do all our part in helping the environment. Now that we again have learned so many enlightening insights, and explore with another question and answer. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat or comment on our Facebook or YouTube Live. If you'd like to speak on mic, please raise your virtual Zoom hand and wait to be called. Faith?
Thanks, Carl, and thanks so much to all the speakers. So while we wait, again, we will have only 6 questions that will be entertained, and rest assured that most, if not all, will be answered by our speakers in the Zoom chat, Facebook, or YouTube comments. Now, while we wait for some questions, let's look at some comments. So Jean Rua Sineza also said that technologies can make our lives easier, but also some of it is harmful to our Mother Earth. Yes, that is true. So as we continue to develop, we make more waste and continue to contribute to climate change. Another comment from J.R. Bulan says that about the polar bear attack news bit, that is probably because of the encroachment of human society into the natural habitat of wild animals. Because we are expanding into what used to be the natural range of these animals, the probability of contact of man and animal is becoming higher. Just a thought. Thank you for that enlightening thought, Mr. J.R. So I think there is a question for Sir Alec. Sir Alec Buenaventura. It starts a bit.
Hello.
Wait lang po, sir. Hi po. From John Lorenz Valenzuela. He says, hi po. It can be perceived momentarily that perhaps climate change is the result of the developed countries, but these countries were once under the category of developing. Their intentions and actions can be seen as a result of their wants and needs for their own people, contextually and categorically, according due to progressive change. I do believe these developed countries are already taking extra steps to address the issues about climate change, and they need to take more extra steps and need to do it all now. I think it is imperative that we learn from them and avoid what is needed to be avoided, like abusing all the natural resources we have in our country and preserve what is beneficial for all. So, Mr. Alec, what do you have to say about this book?
Right. So that is a very good remark. Let us look at it that in the first paragraph first. Okay, so yes, indeed, that these countries came from developing, then became developed, right? That is true. However, not all. With the likes of the colonizers, the previous colonizers such as US, France, Russia, they are actually developed at first. They did not undergo the process of developing. So basically, what you are mentioning here, as I perceive it, are the likes of China, India, Brazil. Though these are developing in category, but look at their economy, they are actually reaching into the developed to become a developed part of this global economy. All right, and you are right. I will point that out, that you are right, that it is because of their progressive desire. However, where did that come from? That notion of progress that they perceive is highly installed to them, of course, by the theory of modernization. The modernization theory tells us that in order for us to grow, to economically develop, we must transfer, or we must evolve from a traditional society to a modernized, industrialized one. So yun ang kanilang mga naging daan in terms of developing. So kind of, although they have the desire to develop themselves, now the way that they develop is a style or a framework demarcated by these instigators. So as they go along and develop, what happened is they still exploit fossil fuels. They still exploit resources, right? So from traditional, they left their agricultural way of living and then become industrialized. So your comment here, you believe that developed countries are already taking extra steps. Yes, I have flashed in my PowerPoint earlier the way on how they compensate on the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development data. They are actually giving us loans. Okay, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, they are giving us financing, and that is actually good. However, on the dependency theory side, when you look at in that scope, in that lens of analysis, you might say that we are just being dependent to them on how we are to deal with our problems, to deal with our climate change problems, and they are still able to live their life the same way, to live their industrialized life the same way. Now, I wanted to make this clear. When I say developed countries, I do not mean the whole. No, I mean the basic concept of being an industrialized nation. Okay, there are lots of movements and initiatives already by these governments, and I recognize that, especially when it comes to international organizations like UN. Okay, but I agree again with your sentiment that it is not enough. It is not enough for that. I just wanted to come from that idea of mentioned to us by Dr. Martin. We must also view or consider the bottom to top approach. It is not always the government then imposed to us. Okay, change can come from us, from the bottom. Okay, and how do I wanted us to start with it? Okay, again, to mention Immanuel Wallerstein, we must first perceive the whole. If we refuse to accept this reality that there is this kind of world system, we cannot know where to start. Okay, but we must understand also, that yes, I agree with that they are taking many steps, but it is imperative for us to follow them. Not really. We can start on our own. We can do a constructivist approach to this matter and start our own solutions. Right. So I hope I have given an insightful comment about John Lawrence's question or comment.
Yes, thank you, sir. That was very enlightening. We have many questions coming in. Thank you so much for your engagement. So let us start with a question from Miss Vida Mariel, who's raising her hand. May you open? Would you like to open your camera, po?
For a while.
Yes, just for a while, so we may see po or appreciate. Thank you po. So there are many comments coming in for our other speakers. While we wait, let me shout out. Who will I shout out? So many people in the chat. Hello. Hello people from Tayabas Western Academy. So nice to have you here from Pampanga State Agricultural University. Oh, so many people.
Yes, we have 308 participants as of now.
Oh, Miss Vida is up here with us. All right, let me proceed for the next question first. This question might be a bit, may invoke strong reaction. So this question is for Ma'am Tony. So can less is more mindset help combat climate change? How can climate change be sexist if women purchase more items than men? What can you say about this?
Okay. Ayan. So, can less is more mindset. So, of course, less is more is actually something that we should have been doing na, lalo na if we care about the environment. By now, we should be lessening our waste, lessening our purchase of products na ma-plastic. So, yes, for your first question, yes. And yan, talagang dapat ginagawa na yan. And next, how can climate change be sexist if women purchase more items than men? So, I don't think climate change is actually sexist. What I discussed earlier is the fact that the effects of climate change, nakaka-apekto sila sa mga ginagawa ng women all over the world. So, if it's based on my example, so household chores, hindi naman necessarily sa lahat ng babae, di ba? So, sinabi ko from India and Bangladesh and areas like that. So, for the women purchasing more items than men, so that's why I suggested earlier, if you didn't see, so yung mga reusable items na natin na ginagamit. Yung reusable na menstrual cup, cotton pads, and yung soaps and conditioner, shampoo. So marami na namang product na binibilan ng mga babae. So of course, we use many things. And I think it's just a way of taking care of ourselves. And hindi naman, at this time, I think marami na dapat nag-support talaga ng mga reusable na yon. And, you know, so I didn't like saying climate change is sexist. It's not sexist. We were just tackling on the issues on how it affects women in other areas of the world, or yung mga nasa areas na prone to disasters. Ayan, so of course, we need more time to discuss on all those issues. 5 minutes is not enough to be able to touch all those aspects or yung mga concept. But yeah, so less is more mindset. Of course, we have to do that. So, syempre, as much as you could, lessen the things that you buy, especially yung mga plastics nga and yung mga hindi naman biodegradable. And then, ayan, so I think that's enough. Yeah. So if you have a follow-up question, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ate Tony, for that. Now, the next question is for Assistant Professor Cabanes from John Christian Miranda. He says that climate change affects the mental health of many people, and these effects leads to different adverse effects that sometimes end up in suicide in extreme cases. As we know it, climate change is a long-term problem. In this regard, what are the possible band-aid solutions people can do to improve their mental health while we're still on the process of taking climate action?
Okay. Thank you, Faith and John, for that very wonderful question, Jokla. So I think first, since you're asking actually for band-aid solutions, we have to romanticize resilience. You know, we have to teach people to be hopeful and faithful. We have to teach them to appreciate what we have, but, you know, not the toxic gratitude. Get a pet, take care of a plant, find the love life, because love life can make us feel high, you know. Provide more programs and apps that can render mental health support. You can also train people about psych emergency and dealing with crisis, teach people to listen and be more compassionate and empathetic and empathic, sorry, empathetic, and yeah, teach them not to invalidate people's feelings. These are very helpful band-aid solutions, because obviously we are just dealing with the symptoms and not the disease, which is climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assistant Professor. That was so awesome. Now, our next question goes to Dr. Martin. Hello po. So, how can we refute if in the first place we need the energy or technology in our life? I think we need to promote more alternative energy with less consumption of carbon dioxide. But sadly, we are far from pursuing this due to it costing so much. Are we ready to push other sources of energy in much sustainable way and have less threat on Mother Earth?
Yes, so good question. Yeah, so I think there is an issue that the technologies are expensive and it will need government funding to subsidize those funds. There is a need, as I said already, to act these activists, and as consumers we can push those energy companies to move towards greener energies. There's also many of the European countries, for example, Germany, are quite good in terms of this, although as we've seen recently with crisis, they're still rely on 50% of their energy coming from oil and gas from Russia. But there is a need, there's an individual, so for example, photovoltaic cells that can be placed on roofs, and again it's thinking about the buildings and new houses that are being built and building regulations that start to incorporate some of those technologies into day-to-day buildings, and then that can help contribute, because there's not one solution fits all. There's a need to contribute as many to solve these problems. So there's pursuing as consumers the energy companies to make them produce greener energy, but also as an individual looking at the ways that we can have new ways of either having photovoltaic cells on our roofs or using new heat sink systems for central heating or air cooling systems. So again, those are expensive, but there's a need for governments to subsidize those, or to consumers to push the organizations to reduce the cost of those types of things. So yes, I think there is a need, but there is still a barrier, but it's working, as I said, that bottom-up approach. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, it makes perfect sense, Dr. Martin. Thank you so much for that answer. So we still have time for 2 questions, but I see many are coming in. So I'll focus on those questions from Facebook because our speakers are in the Zoom meeting right now and they can just reply to you through the Zoom meeting. So our question from Facebook, I think, from Marcel Tabs. I think this is for Sir Alec. How does the Ukraine-Russian war affect the efforts of the Paris Agreement to cut the emission of carbon dioxide by 2030? When we have an energy crisis, could the move to pump up again fossil fuels for the emerging demand be the best option? How can we address the balance between developed countries and developing countries when one is forced to limit the carbon dioxide emissions, but the other is economically and politically gaining from the situation? Sir Alec, what do you think?
I'm happy with that question. That question is highly geopolitical and political sphere on political economy. Anyway, to answer your first question, what does its effect? No, basically, there should not be any effect on the climate Paris Agreement. Okay, it should be intact. It should be followed by all stakeholders. The problem is some of the stakeholders can just easily withdraw from it, right? Now, maybe you are coming from that question because of what we call supply shock, or the threat on supply disruption for oil because of the sanctioning that they are giving Russia because of what they have done to Ukraine. So let me just give a background for everyone. Okay, one sanction that, let's say, US and the European countries has given to Russia is to sanction their importation of Russian oil. Okay, so in effect, these countries who sanctioned Russia will also suffer economically. Why? Because as the person who asked the question said, what is the name of this person? I wanted to recognize this person. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I forgot.
Okay. All right. Whoever you are, you have a great mind.
Marcel.
Magandang iyong pananaw.
Sorry?
Marcel Tabs.
Yes.
Marcel?
Cabs.
Okay, Marcel. Okay, sinabi ni Marcel, no? What Marcel mentioned, that is true. They will suffer economically because they will have shortage on oil. Okay? And as I discussed on one of the teach-ins that we have conducted just last week in March 26, we should consider renewable resources as substitute, not just as substitute good, but as perfect substitute good. The problem about the perception of people about renewable resources is that it is not the same in terms of functionality with the fossil fuels. Let us remove that mindset. Let us consider that this renewable energy is the same qualities, the same function as those of fossil fuel, because actually they are. Okay, and when we start doing that, now we will not be governed by the threat of supply disruption. Sa Pilipinas, tumaas bigla ang oil, right? Naging 70 pesos, no? Naging 70 pesos ang oil. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Bakit ganon? Bumababa ang supply ng oil? No. The reserves, when you look at it, Secretary Cusi said that the reserve is intact. We have enough reserves of oil. But why? Bakit tinasan ang presyo? Kasi nag-expect na magkakaroon ng pagbaba sa supply. Even though this doesn't happen yet, no? Tinaasan nila ang presyo. Bakit nagagawa nila yan? Again, they control this economy. They control the oil production so that pwede nilang taasan yan. And what's worse is our demand for it will not immediately decrease. Kaya hindi agad bababayad, no? Bakit? Kasi pag nagtaas naman ng presyo ng gasolina, yung mga jeepney driver ba, titigil ba silang pumasada? Hindi naman, di ba? Yung mga gumagamit ng kuryente, magbabawas pa sila ng kuryente? Hindi naman, di ba? So we will suffer, especially the importing countries of oil, we will suffer largely from that price increase. Na yung demand natin hindi naman bababa, pero magsasuffer tayo to that very extent of price increase. So what is advisable again, no? What Dr. Martin has given us the examples on how to mitigate the usage of oils, of fossil fuel oil. Let us do that, no? And let us venture. It is start for us to venture into renewable resources. I have 3 P's, actually 4 P's that I have mentioned in my previous teaching. First, practice. You start with yourself. You try to mitigate the usage of fossil fuels. Second, preach. Okay, you tell others, you educate others about this issue. Okay. Third, provide. Find ways to finance even small initiatives for renewable resources. If you have done those 3, you will be employing the last P, which is pressure. That pressure is coming from below. Okay, so the government will see that there is pressure from the people that we wanted to venture into renewable resources. And eventually, when the government sees that effort, they would have to change their investments. Instead of investing more on fossil fuel, they will invest more in renewable resources. So that is it. That is how I view it. Okay, I hope I answered your question. Thank you for that very wonderful question.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Okay. We have a question from Mr. Olem, but this is a bit more about green chemistry. We will get back to you on that. And for our last question, this is a great question because it is for all our speakers. So, what are the ways for future leaders of our country in helping change our environment? So I would like to start this with Dr. Martin. Since he's in the UK, he has a different context. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Dr. Martin.
Okay, so I think the future leaders of the countries and the government are the people on the call now. You're the people now listening to what's going on, listening to them making a change. So it's thinking about what we're hearing now, what we're discussing now, using that bottom-up change, engaging with those communities so that when decisions are being made at governmental level, so that they are engaging, understanding local knowledge and understanding individuals. pressures upon them to come forward with solutions that work across the globe. So I think it's you guys going forward can help with those changes and influence what goes on and lead the world to a better place in terms of climate change. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Yes, we have to do our part to help the country, not only our leaders. All right, so Assistant Prof. Ria, would you like to chime in on this? What ways can future leaders help change our environment?
Hello. Okay, so first, since this is very timely, we have to first vote for leaders who are aware and knowledgeable about this issue. Because if the leaders are not aware, as what I've said earlier, they will not be able to impose or implement regulations that are already here with us, and according to what they have assessed, diagnose, and directly create solutions for the problems that we have in climate change. That's a very, very important rule. They have to be knowledgeable. They have to spend some time understanding the problems that we have. And of course, they have to believe that there's a problem in climate change. Thank you.
Thank you po. I just wanted to say that this question is from RBS Cultura from Facebook. Thank you for your question. And next is Ms. Tony. Would you like to chime in on what ways can future leaders help our country change our environment?
Okay, so I agree with Ms. Ria. So of course we have to choose first and kung sino yung mag-lead sa atin, especially in the Philippines right now. So we're having our election soon. And so what ways? I think it's from the word leader na talaga. So they have to lead, especially in advocating for everything that could help with our environment. So I think there are so many ways they can do, but always the question is if they will really continue to do it. So madami naman pwede talagang simulan, di ba? Madaming pwedeng projects, madaming pwedeng advocacy silang ginagawa. The best way for them is to be consistent on whatever project or whatever help they will provide for the environment and for the people. So, ayan, so mostly supporting and leading in itself, it's the best way, di ba, to help with the environment. So, yun lang naman.
Thank you so much for that. So, individual action, being knowledgeable, and what else? Yes, being knowledgeable on who we will vote for. And also, Sir Gerald gave his piece on the question. He said that we should include educators, scientists, engineers, and professionals in environmental decision-making in the government. So I think that's a great insight. Let us end this question and answer with Sir Alex's answer to what ways can future leaders help in changing the country's environment. Sir Alex?
Again, what are ways future leaders can help change our environment?
Yes, sir.
To answer this question, we have to assume something, right? Because they are future leaders. So these are all dependent to what would happen today. If today we will maintain the status quo, no, and the status quo is that we are using so much fossil fuels, okay? And what am I pointing out is it is detrimental to the country. You cannot invalidate that. And you cannot invalidate that. It is detrimental to our country in many ways, in environment, in economic, and social, as we have discussed. Now, for our future leaders, it is more on a call because many of you here would be the future leaders. Okay? There's just one thing that I want to say very short. Venture into sustainability. Meet that common ground with economic development, with social development, and of course, environmental protection. Those things can happen. And what we are saying here are based on what we have, what we are, I don't know, inaral natin, no? What we have studied. No? And if we are still denying this, no, we cannot push through with our action. Again, consciousness. It is bringing about a greater climate consciousness into the world, that we recognize this as a problem so that we can start to do it. Again, future leaders, be sustainable. Huwag nyo nang tularan ang mga nauna sa inyo.
Thank you, sir, for that. So wonderful. Thank you all for participating in the second climate change dialogue of the event. Before we proceed to the next hour's activities, let us also acknowledge the efforts and time shared and given to us by our resource speakers. So allow me to read the certificate of appreciation to our second set of speakers. This certificate of appreciation is presented to Mr. Alec Hope Buenaventura for being a resource speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice, on climate change, Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom this 2nd of April 2022. We would also like to appreciate Ms. Tony Suzuki for being a resource speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice, on climate change, Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom this April 2, 2022. We would also like to appreciate Assistant Professor Ria Valerie Cabanes for being a resource speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice, on climate change, Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom the 2nd of April 2022. And our last speaker for this session, Dr. John Martin, thank you for being a resource speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice, on climate change, Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom this 2nd of April 2022. Again, thank you so much for being with us today. Now we will take another short 5-minute break. So vibe to this original tune all about climate change and why we should change. When we come back, be ready for a fun activity. Feel free to debate and discuss in the chat because this truly is Make Climate a Conversation. Thank you. See you.
What it means for us to keep living, to witness the world slowly dying. Why don't you open your eyes, open your eyes, open your eyes? Why don't you go heed the signs, go heed the signs, go heed the signs? Temperatures rising more than we can bear. Fossil fuels burn, shouldn't we care? Carbon emissions increase, it's harder to breathe while government reads. Why don't you open your eyes, open your mind and read all the signs? For our plants to die? Will we wait for our waters to dry? Be before we make a stand and fight hand in hand. So let us rise up for climate justice now. Let us fight for a right, for a brighter today. So let us rise up, nothing can stop us now. Heads up, take a stand, let us lead the way to change climate change. Wake up and realize there is no planet B. How about we stop, think about our society? Why don't we go start a change, save the world if it's strange, for our future's sake? Let us start it today, no room for delay. You know there's a way. We will rise up for climate justice now. We will fight for a right, for a brighter today. We will rise up, nothing can stop us now. Hands up, take a step, let us lead the way to change climate change. It's time to take our chance and start a revolution. It's time to build a home for the next generation. Stand for the oppressed, fight for social equity. Hope inside our heart, we will make a legacy. Yeah. We will rise up for climate justice now. Oh, we will fight for right, for brighter today. We will rise up, nothing can stop us now. Oh, heads up, take a stand, let us lead the way. And we will rise up for climate justice now. We will fight for a better tomorrow. We will rise up, nothing can break us down. Onward up in arms, let us be the way to change climate way. To change climate to change climate to change climate to change climate change.
Back. So, after all the things we've heard and seen, it's time to reinforce the learnings. Do you know what climate change is? How it works? Do you know what its effects are on the Earth? Let's find out. We will have two activities from a booklet on climate change called Climate Change Warriors Beginner's Quest, designed by Miss Nathalie Grace Adalid. Miss Adalid is a researcher one at the Philippine Daily Enquirer and currently a second-year student under the Master of Development Communication at University of the Philippines Open University. She was kind enough to allow us to use her material for this event. So, for the first activity, we will be having a climate change rebus game. So, here you will learn what you can do as a student or as an individual to help save the planet. Guess all the rebus game puzzles and become more educated on climate action. So, in this first example, you can see that there are some letters and pictures. So, by changing up or adding or subtracting letters, you get the word climate change. So, CLI plus meet minus the E, which is MAT, plus E, climate. And then change from CH plus the AN from ant, you turn and then turn the T to GE, becomes change. So climate change. All right. So, okay, press the like button if you understand the instructions. Understand the instructions? All right, I see that you get what to do now. All right, let's start. So what can you do? From the Natural Resources Defense Council and American Forests, next are the possible actions you can take to reduce the effects of climate change. So please drop your answer in the chat or comment on our FB or YouTube Live. Be assured that the team will see your message. So before you comment your answer, please wait for the signal so that we can see who actually got the answer first. This is for a review somewhat and also kind of a break from the lecture types that we've been having. So I'm looking at the chat right now. You may put down your answer. Also looking at my teammates' chat and checking. Oh, what happened? I go back. Yes. So you may answer. I'm looking at the chat. So we've been having a lot of discussions, especially since we've been talking about politics and how things are all gray, no black and white. So it is very nice to see so much engagement. Yes, okay. The first one to get the answer correct is Miss Jane C. Aruta with lesson waste. Thank you po. Good job po. Lesson waste po ang sagot. Next po. Yeah, this one is a bit more difficult. Go lang po. You may now put your, I see, Alvain. Ay, sige po. Kayo po pala ang first. Si Alvain Ibarola. Good job po. All right, so this one is a bit more difficult. I'm waiting. You can go put your answers now in the chat. Oh, you got it correctly, Carl. I don't think you can answer. You're the host. Okay, next. Okay, rule, hosts cannot answer. Okay, next, next slide, please. Thank you. Sorry, so yeah, the answer a while ago was stop wasting food. So you may put your answers now. We are watching po. This is the 3rd out of the 8th for this rebus game. What can you do to help change climate change? Any answers? We have it. Reduce carbon footprint. Yes, you're correct, Carol. Buena obra. And congratulations, you're becoming a climate change warrior. So awesome. Okay, this is the next one.
So we are still waiting for the answer. So let us also acknowledge our 275 participants in our Zoom webinar. We also have about 26 viewers in Facebook. So we already have an answer, Faith.
Oh, awesome. Who's that? First, who was able to get the answer first? Wait. Now I have to scroll up. Is it? Congratulations to Miss Lorraine Saminta. You got the correct answer with conserve energy. Okay, we're halfway there. Okay. So what is this? Ano po kaya to? Meron na po bang sumagot? See.
Yes,
Yes.
still
Okay. Sino po?
Lorraine. Still Lorraine Sumintak, I think. Oh, this is so many.
Sir Carl.
The first one to get the correct answer is still Miss Lorraine Sumintak, I think.
Yes, with use renewable energy. Okay. There are 3 more, so you still have a chance to have your name shout out. Okay, what's that? What do you think is that? What's this? A parka? I don't know what that is. Huh.
So
We are
basically, it's a dog.
a dog. Oh, who's that? Who's that? Who got it? Is Miss?
Oh, this is so. The
Is it-
first one to got the correct answer is Miss Debbie Sakai. Thank you, Miss Debbie.
Yes,
Do
po.
commute.
Awesome po. Okay, the last one, I think. No. It's second to the last one.
Yes.
Here's your chance to get your name dropped in our recorded meeting.
A bed, a cat, I think, and a red circle.
Oh, who's that? Who's that? I
Okay.
see in all caps. From Miss Ivy Nethercott Lopez. Tama ka po
Yes.
with B education.
Thank you, Miss Ivy.
Yes. Okay, now for our last one. What is that? It's been
I
happening.
think, yes, it's a pear. Oh, there. Miss
What is it?
Jareen, ano?
Who-
Eh,
Who's
it's from MFS uplore at up.edu.ph. Hi, thank you for the answer. You got the correct one. You got it correct.
Thank you so much. Now it's your turn, Carl. Thank you.
Wow, our audience is super active. Thank you so much for participating in this Reboost game. Now it's time for our second activity. Your quest is to understand the definition of climate change. To do that, arrange all the scrambled words you see and study the definition and underlying concept presented in the next slide. Good luck with the quest. So I will read it to you. What is climate change? According to the United Nations, around 1800s, the idea of climate blank, so you can now comment down your answers. The idea of climate blank. Yes.
Who's first? Wait. It's uploading. So awesome.
Because-
Everyone is participating. I can't even identify.
Yes, I think everyone got the correct answer. So let's proceed.
From Rad Alvin. I think you are Rad with change. Climate change.
Thank you, Rad. So the idea of climate change was started to be investigated, which resulted in the concept of a blank
Sir,
warming. Yes.
yes, Mr. Lin, warming.
Thank you, Mr. Lim.
Thank you po.
Concept of global warming. Concept of a warming planet due to the blank carbon. Thank you. Emissions created mostly by blank humans. So we can track the
Yes,
one who got the correct answer first. So let me proceed. However, after centuries of research, we now define climate change as a long-term shift in blank temperatures. Yes, thank you very much. And a blank weather patterns, yes, caused by natural variations in the solar cycle and human activities such as the use of blank. From Department of Energy, sir, thank you, fossil fuels, which emit blank greenhouse. I can't see who answered first, but thank you for the answers.
Yeah,
Gases,
Aaron, thank you.
which emit greenhouse gases that cause blank Earth to warm.
Yes.
That was really fun. The participants were so smart.
Yes. I think we should read it one time again with passion.
Yes.
Would
Okay.
anyone like to volunteer to read the whole thing completely? Raise your hand.
And raise your hand. Okay, no one is raising. So, okay, let me do it. So, what is climate change? Okay, someone raised a hand. Miss Diane, you can turn on your camera and mic. Hello?
Hello, good afternoon. I just
Yes, good
cannot
afternoon.
turn on my camera.
Okay, thank you.
I have slow internet connection. Anyway, I'll just read. What is climate change? According to the United Nations, around the 1800s, the idea of climate change was started to be investigated, which resulted in the concept of a warming planet due to the carbon emissions created mostly by humans. However, after centuries of research, we now define climate change as a long-term shift in temperatures and wait, what's this?
Weather.
And weather patterns caused by natural variations in
the solar
cycle and human activities such as the use of fossil fuels which emit greenhouse gases that cause the earth to warm.
Wow, thank you so much, Miss Diane. Oh, Miss Diane, it was a really great read. So, right?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Faith. So, yeah, proceed.
Nice one, Kyle. There were so many active participants for these activities.
Yes, indeed. We still have 275 participants. Thank you so much. Right now, let us go to our last set of speakers for this event. In this third session, we will learn what is already being done to aid in the climate solution. We will hear from an environmentalist organization and two of our worldwide teaching interns and their personal climate justice stories.
Yes. Our first speaker is the Marketing and Partnership Officer of Kalinao. She graduated with a Bachelor of Sciences in Pharmacy from Centro Escolar University, Manila, and is an advocate of ocean plastic prevention. Let us give a warm virtual round of applause to Miss Claire Javier.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me and thank you for that wonderful introduction. So, no further ado, I will share my screen for the presentation. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Every- So, in saving our planet, the power is yours. So 9%. Sorry for the slow of my PowerPoint.
No pressure, Miss Javier. You can take your time. Faith, you can do shout outs.
Yes, all right. Let us see who else we can shout out. I'm sorry, I don't know the term. Thank you so much, Miss Kyle Aboy. Here she compiled all of the answers for the activity a while ago.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yes,
So,
yes.
shout out to Jerain Baloran. Hi, and to Herson Sedenio, to Donna Rose Pinero. They were one of the active participants just earlier. So, Miss Javier, are you ready? I think Miss Javier left the meeting.
Okay, no problem. I think we can proceed to the next speaker for now. Would that
Yes.
be all right?
Yes, sure, Faith.
Ms. Javier, we may proceed. Is your internet stable na po ba? Please introduce our next speaker, Mr. Carl.
Okay. So to proceed with our next speaker, she is a multimedia studies sophomore student here at the University of the Philippines Open University. She is a writer, a feminist, and an advocate for animal welfare and climate justice. Let us give a warm round of applause to one of our interns, Miss Mary Chris Adkila. Hello, Miss Adkila. Good afternoon.
Yan. Hi, I'm audible naman, di ba, Carl?
Yes, yes po.
Okay. So I'm gonna start. Hi everyone, I'm Marcus C. Adkila, and as said, I'm a sophomore student from the Bachelor of Arts in Multimedia Studies in UP Open University. So today I'm going to talk about my motivations to becoming climate action intern, and I'm also going to talk about my personal experiences with climate change. So first, my motivations. I joined this internship because I wanted to hone my skills and competencies when it comes to multimedia, and I want to handle and manage information in social media so that we can better support our climate justice advocacy. So, in short, I wanted to realize my full potential and fully develop my abilities through joining the internship. And second, for my second motivation in joining the Worldwide Teach in Philippines is that for my physiological needs. I wanted to meet certain conditions to live, and that is not having to endure the extreme temperatures that we are experiencing right now, especially it's dry season. Actually, my co-interns know that I work really late at night because I'd like to work in an environment that's not too hot for me to work. And we all know that the rising of the temperatures is can be attributed to climate change. So I'm going to talk about our work in social media. So aside from making teach-ins all over the Philippines, as of today, we already have 9 teach-ins that were that happened on the 30th of March, and today we have this event right now that is that is in partnership with UP Open University. So I'm a part of Twitter team, and this is one of our series, which is hashtag Truth Thursday, which we fight disinformation and myths about climate justice. So I encourage everyone to actually go to our Twitter page and follow our social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So you can see their series of tweets that are organized. So another one of our series is that we have Film Friday, where we recommend films and documentaries that are timely, fun to watch, and relatable to not just people my age, but relatable to anyone who would want to learn about climate change. So I had fun with my internship, and it is very fulfilling to meet a lot of like-minded people that are very accomplished in their respective fields. And I know that the discussion about climate justice should be interdisciplinary. So I'm grateful to have my team behind me, and I hope that you would support Worldwide Teach in Philippines, and you can follow us on Twitter at www.teachin_ph on Twitter, and Worldwide Teach-In for Climate PH, and Worldwide Teach-In_.ph. So I have seen a question earlier that said na how can these coming elections, how can presidentiables address climate change? So we actually posted something about that on our pages, so make sure to check that out. So that's my experiences, and I hope that some of you, especially the youngsters that are participating here in this webinar today, will be inspired to also volunteer for causes like this that will benefit not just you, but also everyone else in the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edkila, for sharing your personal journey in this internship. One of the best things about the Worldwide Teach and Internship is that we get to meet a diversity of people and learn about how they got here in our shared experience. And I would like to take this opportunity as well to encourage everyone to follow our different social media platforms. And down to our last speaker for today's Make Climate a Conversation webinar. She is a student of Bachelor of Arts in Communication at the Ateneo de Manila University. She is a Girl Scouts of the Philippines Southern Luzon representative and an advocate for climate justice and human rights. Let us give another welcoming round of applause to Ms. Sophia Alba. Ms. Sophia, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So I'll just be sharing my screen. Okay, so is it viewable right now? Your side?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so all right, I'll be starting now. So first of all, I would first like to share how I got into the advocacy in the first place. So I got into the climate justice because of the notion of climate in people's minds. So often do we hear climate change and global warming in the news, in different seminars and workshops, or posts on social media, and maybe even like slogans and themes for children's events. Oftentimes, we may also notice that it is accompanied by a lot of motherhood statements. The world is growing warmer, our rivers and seas are becoming more and more polluted, and all that. Even in my old high school, I appreciate their effort for hosting seminars about climate change and the continual deterioration of the environment. It was done in good faith. However, what I also notice is that it becomes like a passing conversation. My classmates, and admittedly even me, would be shaken by the videos and pictures or situations that we are presented with for maybe 1 or 2 days, quoting the quotable quotes of our wonderful speakers. But as soon as the hype passes, it was as if we never talked about it in the first place. But one person who I think a lot of us are familiar with, especially in the topic of climate and the environment, actually did something in me, like to wake me up or something like that. This is the climate activist Greta Thunberg. And seeing her, a girl a year younger than me, express concern over climate like how you would over a catastrophe, an earthquake or a typhoon, was a new perspective. And so I tried dabbling more into it. I thought this girl has done a lot to wake me myself up as well. So even in the organization that I am a part of, the Girl Scouts of the Philippines, we are also encouraged either in making a change in our communities through simple projects like in our local areas, or simply being more vocal and then advocate for it in the platforms available to us, particularly social media. After all, a lot of people somehow know about climate change and its effects, or at least be aware of it. But it has always been something so fantastical and abstract a notion. And so now we get to my experience as an intern in this endeavor. If there was one thing that stuck to me during our sessions, it was that we must start integrating this problem, this issue, into our education in a more academic setting that actually deals with the details of its effects and potentially help solve the problem. We are also used to having motherhood statements thrown at us all the time, and yet we don't actually know where the problem starts, especially not where it ends. These past few weeks was a getting together for all us interns through social media presence, making bite-sized academic posts about climate, making known some films that tackle or at least touch on issues on climate and the environment, and sometimes sharing updates and news about the topic on our social media pages, and then also discussing strategies on how to maximize our social media platforms to a really diverse audience. Apart from this, hosting teach-ins like this one, making conversations, is actually the start of integrating climate justice into our learning processes. Looking back, our topics for today's conversation does not simply concern the environment itself. If we can recall, we have talked about the effects of climate change in a national and global scale, climate change and mental health, climate change in women, and we could see that it is deeply ingrained in our lives, whether or not we are aware of it. For me, this has been a really fruitful and eventful experience. And though I personally have a lot to do as well, it's in terms of my lifestyle, I think opening up more conversations like this one in smaller scales would prompt more people to be aware and educated about what can be done, which will soon ripple to the larger organizations and people that could help us make a change. Thank you, and that'll be all.
Thank you so much, Miss Alba, for sharing your story on how you got into climate justice and your personal experience at the Worldwide Teach-In Internship. As for me, for my personal experience, it was also really fun, and that I was also very inspired with other interns, as they have different advocacies regarding the protection of environment, and of course also the actions on building solutions and actions on climate change. So I'm sorry, it was not the last speaker yet. Faith, you may take over.
Yes, thank you. So thankfully, Ms. Javier was able to reconnect. So she is a marketing and partnership officer of Kalinao, and she graduated with a Bachelor of Sciences in Pharmacy from Centro Escolar University Manila, and is an advocate of ocean plastic prevention. So let us give a warm virtual round of applause to Ms. Claire Javier from Kalinao. Miss Javier?
Miss Javier, are you there? Yes, sure. Wait.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good
Hello.
afternoon, ma'am. Yes, you are already audible.
Hello, ma'am. Naririnig na po ako.
Yes
Okay
po,
po.
yes po.
Sorry earlier. Wala po. Okay po. So, let we can start na po. So, in saving our planet, the power is yours. So, next slide, please.
Nalalaman. Palo kita dyan.
Okay. Only 9% of plastics are recycled worldwide, according to Ocean Conservancy and McKinsey Center for Business and Environment. So, the Philippines still contribute 521,000 tons of plastic pollution to the ocean each year. So, sobrang dami yung accumulate natin every year, and then 74% lang doon is the plastics that is actually coming from the howlers and garbage. Next slide. Next, please. Thank you. So that what I'm saying is that the 74% of the plastics that leak into the oceans actually come from the howlers and garbage trucks. So unfortunately, so yung mga nasa ocean ngayon is really recyclable naman sila, but instead hindi sila na-recycle, napupunta lang sila sa ocean, which is very alarming kasi nga maraming naapektuhan in the marine life, and actually fishes and turtles. But it doesn't end here, because a recent study found that microplastic is found in human blood. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, and next. Okay, it was found by Professor Dick Vithak. Please, next. Okay, thank you. And then, so 80% of the people tested nakita na meron silang PET plastics, polystyrene, and polyethylene, which is very alarming kasi dati nasa ocean lang yung problem natin, ngayon nasa human blood na natin or nasa loob na natin. And hindi ko naman kayo tinatakot, pero this is the reality that we have to face right now, and we really need you. And please, the next slide, please. So you see here, yung ocean, so ang daming plastic na, and the turtle is eating the plastics. So, and yung ocean natin, napaka dumi na, hindi na siya clear. So, you or we have the power to stop this now. And please, so that is why we formed Kalinaw. So, next slide, please. Thank you. That is why we formed Kalinaw. So, Kalinaw is for clear or clearer seas, rethinking plastic trading for clearer seas and sustainable future. And that is why we also form a partnership with Plastic Bank. Next slide, please. Thank you. We form a partnership with Plastic Bank for a regenerative society. We have an app for transparency and traceability. Transparency to ensure that transactions are above board, and traceability to know where plastics come from and where it will go. And we both have a environmental and social advocacy. For environmental, we recycle plastic. So for social, we improve lives. Anti-poverty, we work with collectors, sweepers, and other marginalized communities. Next slide, please. So the real question here is, how do you reduce your plastic footprint? So next slide, please. Thank you. We have here is 6 R's: reduce, reuse, repair, recycle, rethink. So we have recycle. In Kalinaw, we recycle plastics. And rethink, we rethink for sustainable packaging. And next slide, please. So we have, you can donate your plastic to Kalinaw for personal donation or group donation, or we can also have a donation drive. We accept PET, HDPE, PP, or LDPE. Next, next please, thank you. We can also set up a collection point for those group who needs fundraising, or scholar who need additional allowances, or underserved community or individual. Next, please. So here we have buy or develop sustainable alternatives to virgin plastics. So here we have social plastic. So what is social plastic? So social plastic is reintegrated recycled plastics into the packaging value chain. Instead of using virgin plastics that are taken from petroleum, a finite resource, we encourage the use of the social plastic. We also have bioplastic, biodegradable plastic, and products from upcycled plastics. And next is you can also, next slide please, you can also volunteer your talent to a worthwhile cause. Actually, we have volunteers from UPOU, so we are happy to have them. And then hindi lang naman sa pag-volunteer ang pwede nyong gawin is minsan yung pagla-like, pag-share nyo is really helping sa community or sa cause na or awareness na tinutulungan nyo. You can help for the spreading the awareness. And for that, please next slide. We are hoping that you also like, share, and follow us, and use the hashtag See the Better Future and hashtag make climate a conversation. I will give a prize through GCash if you are the first one to like, share, and follow us. So please do so. So para magising-gising din naman tayo ngayon. So yun. Thank you so much. So next slides, if ever you are interested to become our partner, we are really happy to welcome you. And the next slide is that the power is yours, the choice is yours, save it or waste it. So we really encourage everyone to donate plastic and help the environment. Thank you so much. Salamat po. And pasensya na sa internet or sa sound ko ngayon. Salamat po.
No problem po, Ms. Javier. Thank you for sharing with us what Kalinaw is and how it operates its social media campaigns. So now that we again have learned from different experiences, it's time to clarify and explore with another Q&A led by Carl. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat or comment on our Facebook or YouTube Live. So be assured that the team will see your message. If you'd like to speak on mic, please raise your virtual Zoom hand and wait to be called.
You can now post or comment down below your questions. So I have read a comment here from I think it was from Pampanga Agricultural University. He asked if we could his students can join the worldwide teach-in as well. So our team leader can answer that. Faith.
Wow. Sir, our internship is actually ending next week, but next year, Bard University will host another internship for worldwide. So we hope you could join with that. I guess you could coordinate then, sir. You could email us or just contact one of our pages. We are responsive naman po doon. Thank you, sir, for showing your interest in that, and we hope to work with Pampanga Agricultural State University soon.
So for our first question, this goes to all the resource speakers. So a question from John Lawrence. Does anybody from our resource speakers able to encounter or experience being red tagged simply for being a climate advocate? If so, how can we avoid it? And are there any safeguards or protections for any individual or groups that will be involved on red tagging simply for fighting what is for our environment? Miss Sophia Alba, you can now answer first.
Okay, as for me, I have never had like an experience where I was red tagged or any of my friends or acquaintances were red tagged simply because of the being an advocate for this, especially because most of the platforms I use is like these ones, conversations and like really safe spaces as well. That maybe that is why I haven't been able to experience it. So I'm not sure, of course, for other speakers. So we can add more to that.
Yes, MC, you can now answer the question. Miss
I know,
Edkila.
Hi.
Yes.
I know one of my co-interns was red tag actually for being a resource speaker, like managing a teach-in. So what was the question again? I think when faced with red tagging, I believe you can do preventive measures. You have to really stick to your core as for me as a multimedia student. You have to stick to your core and know that what you're putting through the internet or any platform that you have is reliable and accurate, and don't let it affect you too much, since yun nga, as we have discussed earlier, talking about climate change can actually affect your mental health. So when it comes to red tagging, you can just ignore or report that person and um do not engage with them if hindi kaya ng mental health mo. But if you can naman, and you're confident that what you're putting out in your platforms are not scary or like terrorist levels, be assured that you're gonna do great, and your advocacy will you will have the you will gain through you will gain great benefits through your advocacy. So ayun lang. Thank you.
Yes, and that we should know that our purpose is valid as well. So, Miss Javier, do you have any words for the question? I think Miss Javier is left again the Zoom. So let me read first the additional idea from Kim Brian Casas. So according to the Philippines Plastic Industry Association, or PPIA, partnered with Nestle on development of a modular composite brick made with multi-layer single-use plastic waste broken down into microplastic form and cement. PPIA also provided key information and technical expertise in improving the existing hollow block making system, including the locally developed equipment designed for the processing flexible plastic materials. Additionally, the association influenced and stressed the importance of developing a holistic system that covers recovery, collection, and treatment. And the study says also that is also 4 to 5 times more stronger than the usual. Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Brian. So down to our next question. Many problems are associated with food delivery, like increase in carbon dioxide emission and plastic wastes. What are your suggestions to food delivery companies to reduce these problems? Maybe Miss Alba can answer this one.
Okay, sure. So this is also from like personal experience, as I have had products delivered to me as well. So oftentimes you would notice that they usually come in bubble wraps, diba? And that's already a lot of plastic. So kahit ako minsan, I also feel stressed na this is such a large amount of plastic that is being like made and thrown every day. So one of the things that I noticed some deliverers also use would be like those shredded made of shredded papers and all that instead of the bubble wrap in order to reduce the plastic. Although although that is a good like what do you call this? Napampalit from bubble wraps. We also understand it is also pricier because it's a lot more expensive, which is why I think it is really hard to switch to other resources as well, especially when it comes to plastic because of how expensive it is. In our capitalist society, syempre, kung ikaw yung business owner, you would prefer to have more profit, diba, than expenses. But those are really one of the ways lang na we can reduce the usage of plastic. So that will be all for me.
Yes, thank you for your beautiful insights, Miss Alba. So, from Christian Genesis, can we also tap for a partnership for our school, Kota National High School in Lucena City, Quezon Province? This is for Kalinaw po. Can you cite some ways on how we're gonna recycle the plastics in our school? Miss Javier, are you
Good
there?
afternoon. Okay. Yes, po. So
Yes.
actually we have partners also in schools, different in Cavite, I think. So we can have number of the schools so we can contact them directly if they are open with the partnership. Ang suggestion ko lang for the kung paano ma-recycle is that maraming ways actually kung ano yung pwede nating ma-recycle. So, in our way, we have a social plastic nga na sinasabi natin is for a regenerative recycled plastic into the packaging value chain. So, we use plastic, we reuse them. So, you can also donate the plastics na lang din for us and kami na rin yung mag-iisip how to recycle them. Pero you can also um, eco bricks, you can use that or other ways na pwede nating magamit yung mga plastic sa school. Kasi minsan may mga school na nga rin ngayon na nag-eco brick, yung ginagawa nila para gumawa ng isang building. So yon, if ever may mga iba pang suggestion ang mga kasama kong presenters, yun po. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Miss Javier. Down to our fourth question. I think we should proceed to the fourth question. This is also a question for you, Miss Javier. So, I have observed that Mountain Dew plastic bottles, green, are everywhere because these are not collected in our area. Do you accept such kind of plastics, or can we do something to connect with the manufacturer to do something so that these will not be a waste everywhere?
The bluish, the greenish, right?
The green,
Mountain
yes.
Dew. It's
Yes, the green.
actually recyclable. We also accept that actually. We have a contact processor for that, so you can donate that to us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your answer, Ms. Javier. So for our fifth
Okay, thank
question,
you.
I think I would ask this question. I'm sorry, what happened? Okay. I would ask this question to Miss Edkila. So what do you think are the best ways or fundamental process to teach climate change? Do the education sector needs to improve the inclusion of climate change topics or awareness to meet the global goals in addressing this matter?
I think the best way to teach climate change is to include it in every discussion siguro, or every subject as much as possible. Like I think climate change and climate justice can be taught in a lot of, oh my god, what happened?
Oo nga, yan yung nakita ko kanina.
Can be taught in a lot of ways. So it can be integrated in science, mathematics, and social sciences. So Yun nga, I think the education sector needs to improve talaga. Yes, for the second question, I think the education sector needs to improve the inclusion of climate change topics, since it is very urgent and important for us, especially 10 years na lang, and yung 10 years na lang, and yung ano natin, yung years na pwede nating what can it, wait, I lost track. yung 10 years na lang yung crucial years na pwede nating
Masaya.
masayang para hindi ma-degrade yung climate natin. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Edkila. So that is also one of our hashtags in our internship, Make Climate a Class, because we are also promoting climate teach-ins, and that we are also would like to suggest their education sector to, of course, include the subject or a discussion about climate justice and climate change in their classes. So thank you for all your questions. I think there is none, or yes, there. Let me read one last additional answer for Mr. Christian Ginto. This is from Miss Sofia Alba. I'm actually a resident of Lucena City as well. I believe the local city garbage disposal already has a pretty good way of handling plastics, such as eco bricks that was mentioned earlier as well. Maybe tallying up with the city government can also be an additional way to help with the school's plastic waste. Thank you very much. So I think that ends our question and answer portion. So Faith, you can now take over.
Yes, thank you all for participating in the third climate change dialogue of this event. Before we proceed to the closing remarks, let us also acknowledge the efforts and time shared and given to us by our research speakers. So allow me to read the certificate of appreciation to our second set of speakers. So this certificate of appreciation is presented to Ms. Claire Javier for being a research speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice on climate change, hashtag Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom the 2nd of April, 2022. Next, we would like to appreciate Ms. Marie Chris Edkila for being a research speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice on climate change, hashtag Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom the 2nd of April, 2022. And our final speaker for this event, Ms. Sofia Alba. Thank you so much for being a research speaker in the webinar discussion on climate justice on climate change, hashtag Make Climate a Conversation, held via Zoom the 2nd of April, 2022.
Yes, thank you everyone. Thank you for all the speakers. And thank you again to all the attendees for participating in the third climate change dialogue of this event. We are almost at the end of the program. We would like to thank all the speakers for dedicating their time and effort into becoming a part of this event. We thank most especially the University of the Philippines Open University Multimedia Center and Ms. Gracie Nat Castillo, Ms. Mary Chris Edkila, and for assisting on the technical aspects of the event. We would also like to thank Ms. Clarice Lozano, Ms. Adrian Hangad, Ms. Daniel Eustaquio, Ms. Sandra Cantoria, and Ms. Patricia Martiliano for designing the presentation, title cards, and certificates for this event, and to our whole Worldwide Teach-In Team Philippines.
Of course, we'd like to thank all of you for attending this event till the end. Without you, this event would not be possible. Before you leave, please answer the evaluation form to get your certificate for the event. I'm Faith Margo Picaubang.
Wait. Before we end the webinar, let us first give our appreciation to Dr. Joanne Serrano for spearheading the event. So after the event, we will also be handing out a certificate to Miss Joanne Serrano. So a certificate of appreciation is presented to Dr. Joanne Serrano with sincere thanks for your efforts and valuable role in making climate justice and climate change #Make Climate a Conversation webinar event possible, held via Zoom this 2nd of April 2022. To Ms. Joanne Serrano, thank you very much. And on behalf of the Worldwide Teach in Philippines, we are truly grateful. Yes, Faith?
Yes, that's me. I am Faith Margo Picaubang.
And I am Carl Alex M. Lorito. And this marks
The end.
the end of #Make Climate a Conversation teach-in.